You're watching a 9 News special presentation live from police headquarters. Friends one day, enemies the next. That's the reality of life in the drug world. For two South Australian men, it was a lifestyle that would prove fatal, believed to have been killed by greedy associates who are still walking the streets.
Welcome to Coober Pedy, population 4,000. It's a place like no other, an underground town in the heart of the harsh South Australian outback, a place where dreams are made and dashed in the vast opal fields on the edge of town. For Andrew Wilbur Williamson, it was home.
He liked the fact that it was a small, close community, and that he fitted in. He became an opal miner, and he had his own mining plant. He was also part of the mine rescue.
But Wilbur had a secret that would eventually cost him his life.
He was a local cannabis dealer, and it's probably that cannabis dealing and the money associated with that which has probably led to his murder.
In the early hours of November 11, 2003, the 43-year-old was found dead inside his dugout, a short drive from the main street. Detectives believe he'd let his killers in.
Wilbur was in his bed, and there was probably a knock at the door, gone to answer the door, and as he's opened it the slightest, it's probably been pushed into him, forcing him backwards, and then he's ended up on the floor over there, his head towards the fridge.
Wilbur had been beaten so savagely, it was initially thought he'd been shot, but it was soon discovered the dugout had been ransacked. Gone was Wilbur's rare jewellery collection and the proceeds of his latest drug deals. Police say his killers knew what they were looking for.
They've just come in, done what they did and taken off.
That's right, yes.
Crime scene investigators scoured the home but couldn't find any fingerprints, footprints or DNA. But a few days later, a clue turned up in an unlikely place.
And one of his associates was walking through the car park here and saw one of those large money tins. We went back to Wilbur's dugout, and sure enough, his money tin was missing.
The tin was dumped just 100 metres from the police station. It's now being re-examined using new forensic procedures that could finally shed light on who stole it.
With advances in technology, particularly in the area of DNA, we'll have it retested and see what it brings up.
In the aftermath of the murder, police spent months here in Coober Pedy unravelling Wilbur's web of friends and associates. While some residents gave their DNA voluntarily, others didn't. But slowly and surely, detectives were inching closer to a breakthrough.
To gain the trust of people within smaller communities like Coober Pedy takes time, and in this particular instance, it's probably taken 12 years.
Information provided to police in recent months has shifted the focus from one suspect to another group, and now detectives are closing in. All they need is the final piece of the puzzle.
It's given the family of Mr. Williamson some hope that things are moving along.
People need to understand how hard it is to lose a brother. I like the town and I like the people in the town. I believe that somebody knows what's going on.
And while detectives tighten the net around Wilbur's killer, 900 kilometres away on the Yorke Peninsula, another murder investigation is gaining pace. Again, it's linked to the drug trade, but in this case, the victim is much higher up the supply chain. In many ways, Peter Timmermanis was a typical Aussie bloke. He loved his kids, his work, and going to the pub.
He was very sociable, loved his mates, would do anything for them. Yeah, he was a good soul deep down.
But the father of three was also naive, and when his relationship with Margie Wilson soured in the late 80s, his life changed for the worse.
Things just went downhill from there. He got involved with the wrong people, and because he had the good heart, I think people imposed on him.
Timmermanis got tangled up in an Adelaide drug syndicate and before long was growing his own cannabis crop on private property at Gleeson's Landing.
From what we understand, it was close to $750,000 worth of cannabis, a substantial amount, and that Peter stood to gain a fair chunk of that for his involvement in cultivating the crop.
On July 17, 1991, the 31-year-old hired this Ford truck from an Adelaide company. It's understood he drove the vehicle to the peninsula and loaded it with drugs destined for interstate dealers. But what happened next remains a mystery.
It appears he's vanished off the face of the earth.
People were asking where he was, and there was just no answers.
A week later, Timamanus and several associates were due to board a plane to Cyprus. The 31-year-old never arrived.
From all reports, these group of people that travelled to Cyprus weren't at all surprised that Peter didn't arrive at the airport. And in fact, a relative of one of these people attended the airport, passport in hand, bag packed and ready to go to replace Peter to take his ticket.
Days later, in the Mediterranean, an associate deposited a six-figure sum into a bank account. Detectives believe it was Timamanus's drug money.
That person we know was on benefits at the time, and we highly suspect that those funds were proceeds of crime. There's definitely no loyalty amongst criminals, friends one day and enemies the next.
Timamanus's relatives were initially reluctant to tell detectives about his involvement with drugs, fearing the investigation would be given a low priority. So it wasn't until years later the real story emerged and police zeroed in on the Yorke Peninsula property. Police received a tip-off Timamanus had been shot dead and his body dumped in a well once used to water the cannabis crop.
In this particular area, 4 wells have been drained and searched, and nothing of interest has been located in any of them.
Police are likely to search there again in coming months, and detectives continue to monitor Timamanus's associates, searching for the evidence needed to land them behind bars.
He wasn't a bad person at all, so just please, if you know something, just come forward. I mean, it's 23 years now. We need to put it to rest.